Captain Hyan stood in the center of the Grand Assembly Hall, his dark uniform still carrying the smell of burned metal and ozone from his last mission. Around him, hundreds of alien representatives sat in their floating chairs. Their strange faces turned toward him with expressions he had learned to read over the years. Some showed respect, others showed fear, a few showed disgust. The hall was massive, bigger than most human cities. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. Golden light came from crystals that hung in the air, casting everything in a warm glow that most species found comforting. Humans found it too bright, but they had learned to adapt. They always adapted. Hyan's report was simple and direct, the way humans always spoke in these meetings. Mission complete. The pirate base in the Crimson Nebula has been destroyed. All civilians have been rescued. Total human casualties, 2 dead, 7 injured. A sound like wind through leaves filled the hall. The aliens were talking among themselves, their voices creating a strange music that humans could never quite understand. Hyan waited. He had done this many times before. Ambassador Kixtel rose from his chair. The Veltharian was tall and thin, with skin that looked like polished silver, and eyes that glowed soft blue. He had been the most vocal critic of human methods in the council. "Captain Hyan," he said, his voice carrying the musical tone that all Veltharians used when they spoke. "Your success is noted. However, the council has concerns about your methods." Hyan said nothing. Behind him, Lieutenant Nari and Sergeant Tay stood at attention. They had been with him for 3 years, through missions that would have killed any other species. They trusted him completely, and he trusted them. That was how humans worked. The Crimson Nebula operation required the destruction of 17 pirate vessels, Counselor Vashamari said from her position near the center of the assembly. The Zephyrian's skin changed colors as she spoke, shifting from green to yellow to red. Intelligence reports suggest that several ships contained pirates who might have surrendered. "They fired on the rescue ships," Hyan replied. "They fired on ships carrying children. But did you attempt to communicate with them? Did you offer them a chance to surrender?" Kixtel's voice grew sharper. "Or did you simply destroy them as you destroy everything that opposes you?" The hall grew quiet. Every alien representative was watching now. This was not just a mission report anymore. This was a trial, and Hyan understood that he was the one being judged. The pirates had nuclear weapons aimed at the civilian station, Hyan said. They had already killed 300 hostages to prove they were serious. Communication would have taken time. Time meant more dead civilians. "And so you chose to be judge and executioner," Vashmari said. Her skin was now a deep red that meant anger in Zephyrian culture. "You decided who lived and who died." "I decided to save the innocent," Hyan replied. "The pirates decided to threaten them." Dr. Yoon sat in the observer section, her face showing no emotion. She was the human representative to the council, but she rarely spoke in these meetings. She preferred to watch and listen. Today, she was recording everything on her personal device, though she made sure no one could see her doing. Kixtel spread his arms wide, a gesture that meant he was addressing the entire assembly. "For 30 years, we have relied on these Deathworlders to handle our security concerns. We told ourselves it was necessary. We told ourselves that their violent nature, born from their savage planet, was a tool we could use for peace." Nine alien heads nodded in agreement. The Corvanians made their clicking sounds that meant approval. The Thexians hummed in harmony. "But look at what we have become," Kixtel continued. We solve every problem with violence. We answer every threat with destruction. These humans have made us forget that there are other ways to handle conflict. Hyan felt Nari tense behind him. She had lost her brother in the defense of the outer colonies, killed by raiders who had ignored every attempt at peaceful communication. Tay had scars on his arms from toxic gas used by terrorists who had rejected 3 separate offers to negotiate, but they said nothing. They were soldiers, and soldiers followed orders. The Council has reached a decision, Vashmari announced. Human military forces will be withdrawn from active duty and replaced with automated systems and peacekeeping forces from more civilized species. The words hit the humans like physical blows. Hyan's face remained calm, but his dark eyes grew cold. Dr. Yoon stopped recording and looked up at the Council for the first time during the meeting. Your weapons will be restricted to defensive systems only, Kixtel continued. Your soldiers will be reassigned to support roles under the command of non-human officers. Your ships will return to human space within 1 standard month. And if we refuse? Hyan asked quietly. The question sent a chill through the hall. Several alien representatives moved nervously in their chairs. They had never heard a human ask such a question before. Then you will be removed from the Galactic Federation, Vashmari said. Your trade agreements will be cancelled. Your colonies will be cut off from galactic communication networks. You will return to the isolation your species knew before you joined us. Hyan nodded slowly. I understand. But his understanding was not the same as their understanding. They saw submission in his calm acceptance. They saw a defeated soldier accepting the end of his career. What they did not see was the look that passed between Hyan and Dr. Yoon, or the small gesture she made with her hand. The Council thanks you for your service, Captain, Kixtel said. You and your kind have served the galaxy well, but it is time for a more peaceful approach to our problems. As the Council session ended, and the alien representatives began to leave, Dr. Yoon made her way to where Hyan stood with his team. They spoke quietly for a moment, too quietly for the remaining aliens to hear. How long do you think it will take? Nari asked. For what? Tay replied. For them to realize what they have just done, Hyan said. Dr. Yoon smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret that would change everything. Not long, she said. Not long at all. As they left the Grand Assembly Hall, none of the aliens noticed that Dr. Yoon's personal device was still recording. None of them realized that her message was already being transmitted to every human ship, station, and colony in the galaxy. And none of them understood that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. They had asked the Guardians to leave. Soon, they would learn what the galaxy looked like without them. The message reached Admiral Minho while he was drinking coffee in his command center aboard the battleship Thunder Bay. The coffee was real Earth coffee, shipped from home at great expense, and he was savoring the bitter taste when his communication officer approached with a data pad. Priority message from Dr. Yoon, sir, the young ensign said. Eyes only. Minho set down his cup and took the pad. As he read, his expression never changed, but the coffee grew cold in his cup. Around him, the bridge crew continued their normal duties, monitoring the trade routes that kept the Kepler sector safe and profitable. Communications, Minho said quietly. Send a message to all human vessels in this sector. Recall Order Alpha 7. All ships return to base immediately. The communication officer, a veteran named Commander Park, looked up in surprise. Sir, Alpha 7? That's a full withdrawal. You heard the order. Within hours, something began. to happen that had never occurred in the 30 years since humans joined the Galactic Federation. Human ships, from massive battleships to small patrol craft, began turning around and heading home. The first sign of trouble came from the Kepler Trade Authority. Director Vexquan, a nervous Trilaxian with too many eyes and not enough backbone, contacted Minho directly. "Admiral, our sensors show your fleet moving away from the patrol routes," the alien said, his multiple eyes blinking rapidly. "Is this some kind of training exercise?" "No exercise, Director," Minho replied politely. "We have been ordered to withdraw all human forces from active patrol duty. Our replacement should arrive soon." The silence that followed lasted so long that Minho wondered if the communication had been cut. When Vexquan finally spoke, his voice was much higher than before. "Replacement? What replacement, Admiral? We have 18 merchant convoys traveling through the sector right now. The Bloody Stars pirate clan has been watching these routes for months, waiting for an opportunity. Then I suggest you contact the Galactic Council about deploying alternative security forces," Minho said. "Good luck, Director." The communication ended. Minho turned back to his coffee, but it was too cold to drink now. Meanwhile, on Nexus Station, Commander Young was having a similar conversation with Station Administrator Morteth. The Corellian was trying very hard to remain calm, but his clicking speech was getting faster and more frantic with each word. "Commander Young, you cannot simply leave," Morteth clicked. "This station processes 4 million tons of cargo every day. We have diplomatic meetings scheduled with 17 different species. The Neutral Zone Summit is next week." Young continued packing her equipment into regulation cases. Around her, human security officers were doing the same thing. They moved with quiet efficiency, each person knowing exactly what to do without being told. "I understand your concerns, Administrator," Young said. "Our replacement security force should arrive within the week." "What replacement force?" Morteth's clicking reached a pitch that hurt human ears. "The Veltharian Peace Corps? They have never handled anything more dangerous than a trade dispute. Commander, we have had 0 security breaches in 5 years. Under human protection. 0. Young sealed her last equipment case and turned to face the Administrator. She was a small woman, but something in her eyes made most aliens step back when they looked at her directly. "Administrator, with respect, that was not our choice to make," she said. "The Council has decided that human security methods are too aggressive. I am sure your new security team will handle things in a more civilized manner." As the human security forces left Nexus Station, Morteth stood in the main security center, looking at screens that showed every corridor, every docking bay, every sensitive area of the massive station. For 5 years, those screens had been watched by humans who could spot trouble before it started, who could end threats before they became dangerous. Now they would be watched by Veltharians who thought carrying weapons was barbaric. But the most dramatic withdrawal was happening. On the frontier, Major Jin received the recall order while his regiment was dug into defensive positions around Firebase Omega. They had been holding this position for 8 months, fighting off wave after wave of hive attacks. The insectoid aliens were relentless, but human tactics and human stubbornness had kept them from breaking through. Jin called his officers together in the command bunker. The walls shook as hive biocannons fired at their position, but no one flinched. They had grown used to the sound. "New orders," Jin announced. "Full withdrawal. Pack everything. We leave in 12 hours. Captain Lee, his second-in-command, stared at him. "Sir, leave? The Hive has 3 million warriors massed just beyond that ridge. If we leave, that becomes someone else's problem," Jin said quietly. Orders are orders. The news spread through the human forces like fire. Soldiers who had fought and bled to hold this line were told to pack up and go home. Some were angry. Some were confused, but they all obeyed because they were soldiers, and soldiers followed orders. The replacement forces arrived just as the humans were finishing their withdrawal. Colonel Mordus of the Veltharian Defense Corps stepped out of his transport and looked around at the fortifications with obvious distaste. "Barbaric," he muttered to his aide. "Look at all these weapons emplacements, these crude barriers. Humans see violence in everything." Major Jin met him at the command post and handed over a data pad containing 8 months of tactical reports, enemy movement patterns, and strategic analysis. "Colonel, this contains everything we have learned about hive tactics and behavior," Jin said. "They attack in waves, usually at dawn. They probe for weaknesses constantly. They never retreat unless they are completely destroyed." Mordus took the pad but did not look at it. "Major, the Veltharian Defense Corps has been studying peaceful conflict resolution for 3 centuries. I think we can handle a few insects without resorting to your methods." Jin looked at the colonel for a long moment. Behind the Veltharian officer, elegant soldiers in spotless uniforms were setting up equipment that looked more like art installations than military hardware. "Good luck, Colonel," Jin said finally. "You are going to need it." As the human transports lifted off, carrying away the last of the human forces, Jin watched the hive positions through his binoculars. In the distance, millions of insects were gathering for an attack that would come with the dawn. The Veltharians were setting up meditation circles and communication arrays, preparing to negotiate with creatures that saw all non-hive life as food. Back on Earth, Dr. Yun sat in her office in Geneva, watching reports come in from across the galaxy. Every human force was withdrawing exactly on schedule. Ships that had protected trade routes for decades were heading home. Soldiers who had held impossible positions were packing their gear. Security forces that had kept the peace were handing over their responsibilities to species that had never faced real danger. Her assistant, a young man named Day, brought her tea and a summary of the communications they were receiving. "Doctor, we are getting thousands of messages from alien authorities," he said. "They want to know when the withdrawals will be complete. They want to know about transition procedures. Some of them are demanding that we reconsider." Dr. Yun sipped her tea and smiled. "Tell them that all human forces will be completely withdrawn within 72 hours, exactly as the Council requested." "And the requests for reconsideration?" "Tell them that the Council made their decision. Now, they get to live with it." As the sun set over Earth, the last human patrol ship crossed into Terran space. For the first time in 30 years, there were no human weapons protecting alien trade routes, no human soldiers standing guard over alien colonies, no human security forces keeping the peace in alien stations. The galaxy was about to learn what peace looked like without guardians. The first ship died on a Tuesday. The merchant vessel Blue Horizon was carrying medical supplies to the outer colonies when the Bloody Stars pirates found it. The ship's Trilaxian captain sent out a distress call, expecting the human patrol that had protected these routes for 15 years. Instead, he got silence. The pirates boarded without resistance. The crew of 12 was killed within minutes. The medical supplies were stolen or destroyed. The ship was left drifting, empty and cold, as a warning to others. By the end of the week, 7 more ships had been attacked. The pirates were testing the new reality, and they liked what they found. Director Vexquan of the Kepler Trade Authority sat in his office, staring at reports that made no sense. In 5 days, his sector had lost more ships than in the previous 5 years combined. His replacement security force, a patrol of 6 Trilaxian vessels, had responded to exactly one distress call. They had arrived 4 hours too late and found only wreckage. "Get me Admiral Min Ho," he told his assistant. "Sir, the Admiral is no longer in this sector. All human forces have been withdrawn." "Then get me someone, anyone." "We need help." The assistant's large eyes blinked nervously. "Sir, the Galactic Council said that human forces were being replaced with more civilized alternatives." "More civilized?" Vexquan's voice rose to a shriek. "The pirates just destroyed a hospital ship. A hospital ship! Where is the civilization in that?" But there was no answer. The civilized alternatives were busy attending meetings about peaceful conflict resolution while the galaxy burned around them. On Nexus Station, things were going even worse. The terrorist attack came at 0300 station time, when most of the inhabitants were asleep. 6 beings in black masks appeared in the main commercial district, carrying weapons that the Veltharian security forces did not recognize. They had studied these weapons in theory, but they had never seen them used in practice. The attack was over in 17 minutes. 43 beings died, including 12 children. The terrorists escaped through maintenance tunnels that the human security forces had sealed years ago, but which the new security team had reopened for better access. Station Administrator Morteth stood in the wreckage of what had been a peaceful shopping center, looking at the blood on the walls and trying not to vomit. Around him, Veltharian security officers stood helplessly, their non-violent training completely useless in the face of actual violence. "Call Earth," he said to his assistant. "Call the humans. Tell them we need help." "Sir, the humans are no longer responsible for our security." "I don't care what they are responsible for," Morteth screamed. "Call them anyway." The call went through, but the response was polite and unhelpful. Human security forces were no longer available for deployment. Perhaps the Galactic Council could provide assistance, but the real disaster was happening on the frontier. Colonel Mortis had been confident that his peaceful approach would work with the Hive. He had set up communication arrays and prepared messages of friendship. He had ordered his soldiers to put down their weapons and approach the Hive positions with open hands. The attack came at dawn, just as Major Jin had predicted. 3 million Hive warriors swarmed over the defensive positions. Like a living flood, the Veltharian soldiers, trained for peaceful negotiations, found themselves facing creatures that had no interest in talking. The insects moved with perfect coordination, each one linked to a collective mind that saw the defenders not as people, but as obstacles to be removed. The communication arrays were destroyed in the first 30 seconds. The meditation circles became killing grounds. Elegant Veltharian weapons, designed to stun rather than kill, proved useless against creatures that felt no pain and feared no death. Colonel Mordas himself lasted almost 10 minutes, long enough to send one final message. "Hive breakthrough. All positions lost. Request immediate evacuation. Where are the humans?" But the humans were gone, and no one else could help. The Hive poured through the broken defensive line like water through a cracked dam. Planet after planet fell as the insects spread across space that had been safe for decades. Colonies that had never seen war found themselves facing an enemy that consumed everything in its path. On the planet Kepler Prime, Governor Vashatel received reports that made her skin turn the pale blue of absolute terror. The Hive was 3 systems away and moving faster than anyone had thought possible. Her defense fleet consisted of 12 patrol boats designed for customs inspections. "Send a message to Earth," she ordered. "Tell them we will pay anything. Give them anything. Just send help." The message was received at Luna Command, where Dr. Yoon was coordinating the withdrawal of the last human forces. She read the desperate plea and set it aside with hundreds of others just like it. "Doctor," her assistant Day said quietly, "perhaps we should respond to some of these requests. The situation seems to be getting quite serious." Dr. Yoon looked at him with cold eyes. "The situation has always been serious, Day. That is why we were there in the first place. The council decided they no longer needed us. Now they get to learn what that means." Reports continued to flood in. The Bloody Stars pirates had taken control of 6 star systems and declared themselves the new government. The Free Trade Confederation had collapsed as merchant ships refused to leave port without protection. 3 different terrorist groups had claimed responsibility for attacks on civilian targets, and the hive kept growing. Captain Hyan sat in his quarters aboard the ship that was taking him home, reading the tactical reports with professional interest. The hive advance was following exactly the pattern that human analysts had predicted 5 years ago, the patterns that had led to the defensive strategy that Colonel Mordas had dismissed as barbaric. Lieutenant Nari found him there, staring at his datapad. "Sir, the crew is talking," she said. "They want to know if we are going to respond to the emergency calls." "What emergency calls?" Hyan asked. "All of them, sir. The Trade Authority is offering 1,000,000 credits for 1 patrol ship. Nexus Station is promising full citizenship and land grants. Even some of the council members are sending personal messages." Hyan set down his datapad and looked out the window at the stars. In those stars, beings were dying because their leaders had made a choice to reject the protection they had always taken for granted. "Tell the crew that we are no longer galactic peacekeepers," he said quietly. "We are going home." "And if they ask what happens to the people who are dying?" Hyan was quiet for a long moment. "Tell them that should have been considered before the vote. On Earth, the leaders of humanity watched the galaxy tear itself apart. They received hundreds of messages every day, begging for help, offering bribes, threatening consequences. Dr. Yoon read them all and answered none, because they were waiting for the moment when the galaxy would understand the difference between wanting peace and maintaining it, waiting for the lesson to be learned completely. They had tried to be gentle teachers for 30 years. Now it was time for a harder lesson. The galaxy had asked them to leave. Soon, very soon, the galaxy would beg them to come back. But when they did return, it would not be as the restrained peacekeepers they had been before. When they returned, it would be as what they truly were, the deadliest species in the galaxy, finally unleashed to do what they did best. The galaxy was about to learn the difference between having Deathworlders as guardians and having them as conquerors. The delegation arrived at Earth in ships that shook with fear before they even entered the atmosphere. Only 12 ships remained from the once mighty Galactic Council fleet. Half the member worlds had fallen to the hive, their populations consumed, or converted into mindless drones. The other half existed as isolated islands in a sea of chaos, protected only by whatever defenses they could scrape together. Ambassador Kixtel led the delegation, but he was no longer the proud Veltharian who had spoken so confidently about civilized alternatives to violence. His silver skin had turned gray with stress, and his glowing blue eyes now flickered with desperation. Beside him, Counselor Vashmari's color-changing skin remained a constant shade of pale yellow. the Zephyrian color of absolute terror. They landed at Geneva Spaceport, the same place where humanity had first signed the Galactic Accords 35 years ago. But now, human soldiers in full combat gear surrounded their ships. These were not the careful, restrained peacekeepers the aliens remembered. These soldiers moved like predators, their weapons ready, their eyes scanning for threats that might not even exist. Dr. Yoon met them in the same conference room where the accords had been signed, but she was no longer the quiet observer who had sat in the back of the council chambers. She sat at the head of the table now, flanked by human military officers whose very presence made the aliens nervous. "Ambassador Kixtel," she said politely, "how nice to see you again. Please sit down." Kixtel tried to speak with his old authority. "Dr. Yoon, the Galactic Council demands that humanity honor its obligations to the galaxy. You cannot simply abandon your responsibilities." Dr. Yoon smiled, but it was the kind of smile that made small children hide behind their parents. "Abandon our responsibilities. Ambassador, we were relieved of our responsibilities by you in a formal vote. Would you like me to play the recording?" She gestured, and a holographic display showed the council session from 2 months ago. Kixtel watched himself vote to remove human forces from active duty, his voice confident as he spoke about civilized alternatives to violence. "That was before—" Kixtel started. "Before what?" Dr. Ayun interrupted. "Before you learned what the galaxy looks like without us? Before you discovered that peace is not the natural state of the universe? Before you realized that someone has to fight the monsters so that you can sleep safely at night?" The hologram switched to current reports from across the galaxy. Burning planets, destroyed space stations, ships full of refugees fleeing from horrors they had never imagined possible. "The Hive has consumed 47 worlds," Dr. Yoon continued, her voice as calm as if she were reading a weather report. "The Bloody Stars pirates control 6 star systems. Trade has dropped by 90%. Over 2 billion beings have died in the past 2 months. Counselor Vashamari leaned forward, her skin shifting to a desperate orange. "Dr. Yoon, please. Our people are dying. Children are dying. Surely you cannot simply watch this happen." "Watch this happen." Dr. Yoon's voice grew cold. "Counselor, we predicted this would happen. We warned you it would happen. We spent 30 years preventing it from happening, and you voted to stop us." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful Earth landscape. "Do you know what my people called this planet before we left it? Hell. We called our own world Hell because everything on it was trying to kill us. Every plant, every animal, every microorganism. Every day was a fight for survival." The aliens shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. They had heard stories about Earth, but most of them thought the stories were exaggerated. "We learned to fight because we had to," Dr. Yoon continued. "We became killers because the alternative was extinction. And when we reached the stars and found other species, we tried to be better. We tried to be the guardians instead of the conquerors. We tried to use our skills to protect instead of destroy." She turned back to the delegation. "But you decided we were too violent, too aggressive, too dangerous. You wanted civilized protectors instead of effective ones." "We made a mistake," Kixtel said quietly. "It was the first time any of them had admitted it." "Yes, you did." Dr. Yoon sat back down. "The question now is what you are willing to do to fix it." The negotiations that followed were not really negotiations at all. They were surrender terms, presented with the polite efficiency that humans used when they wanted to be absolutely clear about who was in control. "These are our conditions. Dr. Yoon said, sliding a data pad across the table. Complete restructuring of the Galactic Federation with humans in permanent control of all military and security operations. Full access to all alien technology and resources. And formal recognition that decisions about galactic security will be made by humans, not by committee. Vashmari looked at the terms and her skin turned bright red. These terms are unacceptable. You are asking for complete control of the galaxy. No, Counselor, Dr. Yoon replied. We are asking for complete control of galactic security. You can keep your trade agreements and your cultural exchanges and your diplomatic dinners, but never again will military decisions be made by people who think violence is uncivilized. And if we refuse? Kixtel asked, though his voice made it clear he already knew the answer. Dr. Yoon activated another holographic display. This one showed the current disposition of human forces, ships and soldiers that had been withdrawn from active duty but not disbanded. The aliens had assumed these forces were being demobilized. They were wrong. If you refuse, then you can. Try to handle your problems yourselves, Dr. Yoon said. We estimate that the Hive will reach the core worlds within 3 months. The pirates will probably control most of the outer rim by then. As for the terrorist attacks, she shrugged. I suppose that depends on how many enemies you have made over the years. The silence in the room was broken only by the soft humming of the building's air circulation system. Finally, Kixtel spoke. And if we agree to these terms, what happens then? Dr. Yoon's smile returned, but this time it was different. This was the smile of a predator that had just been given permission to hunt. Then we solve your problems, she said simply. All of them, permanently. A younger alien, a Corvanian, delegate named Kliktar, spoke for the first time. Dr. An, when you say permanently, what exactly do you mean? Dr. Yoon looked at him with eyes that had seen the reports from 47 consumed worlds. I mean that when we are finished, the Hive will no longer exist, the pirates will no longer exist, the terrorists will no longer exist, anyone who threatens. The innocent will learn very quickly why it is a bad idea to make enemies of Deathworlders. That sounds like genocide, Vashmari whispered. That sounds like justice, Dr. Yoon replied. But if you prefer to call it genocide, that is your choice. The result will be the same. The vote was unanimous. Even the aliens who had spoken most strongly against human violence voted yes, because they had learned finally that there was a difference between violence and necessary violence, between killing and protecting. As the delegation prepared to leave, Kixtel approached Dr. Yoon privately. Doctor, when your forces return to active duty, will they be the same forces that served before? Dr. Yoon considered the question carefully. Ambassador, for 30 years we sent our gentlest soldiers to protect the galaxy. We gave them rules about minimum force and proportional response. We taught them to be peacekeepers first and warriors second. She paused, looking out at the ships that would carry the aliens back to their dying civilizations. Those soldiers are still available, she continued. But I think this situation calls for a different approach. This time, we will send warriors first and let them decide how much peace the galaxy deserves. That night, as the alien delegation flew back toward their collapsing federation, emergency orders went out to every human military base, every training facility, every ship in the fleet. The restraints were coming off. The rules were changing. And for the first time in 30 years, humanity would show the galaxy what Deathworlders looked like when they stopped playing fair. The aliens had asked for their protection back. They were about to get much more than they had bargained for. The first strike came without warning, without mercy, and without the restraint that had defined human military action for 30 years. Admiral Min Ho's fleet dropped out of hyperspace in the Antares system like avenging angels made of steel and fire. But these were not the careful patrol ships that had once protected trade routes. These were human warships in their true form, vessels designed by a species that understood war as a fundamental force of nature. The Hive had consumed 3 planets in this system and was working on the 4th when the humans arrived. Millions of insectoid warriors swarmed through space in their bioships, confident in their overwhelming numbers. They had destroyed every fleet that had tried to stop them. They expected this one to be no different. They were wrong. All ships. "This is Admiral Min Ho," came the calm voice over the fleet communications. "New rules of engagement are in effect. There will be no attempts at communication. There will be no warnings. There will be no survivors." The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the Hive presence in the Antares system had been completely erased, not defeated, not retreated. Erased, every bioship destroyed, every warrior killed, every structure reduced to floating debris. The 4th planet, which had been halfway consumed, was bombarded from orbit until nothing moved on its surface. Standard human military doctrine called this sanitization. The aliens who received the reports called it something else entirely, but Admiral Min Ho was not finished. His fleet jumped to the next system, then the next, following the trail of Hive expansion backward toward its source. At each system, the result was the same: complete annihilation, no prisoners, no negotiations, no mercy. On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Hyon was dealing with the pirate problem in his own way. The Bloody Stars had made their headquarters in the asteroid belt of the Vega system, thinking the floating rocks would provide cover from attack. They had built a fortress that could house 10,000 pirates and had declared themselves the legitimate government of 6-star systems. Hyon arrived with a single ship. The pirates laughed when they detected the lone human vessel. They sent a message offering to let him leave if he delivered a tribute of weapons and supplies. They thought one ship posed no threat to their mighty fortress. They learned otherwise when their asteroid base simply disappeared in a flash of light that could be seen from 3 systems away. The weapon that destroyed it was something the pirates had never seen before. Something that had been locked away in human arsenals for 30 years while humanity played by galactic rules. It was called a planet cracker, and it did exactly what its name suggested. After the fortress was gone, Hyon sent a message on all pirate frequencies. It was short and to the point. "This is Captain Hyon of the Human Defense Force. You have 1 hour to surrender or to leave galactic space permanently. Anyone found engaging in piracy after that time will be destroyed without warning." Most of the pirates ran. The ones who did not died quickly and without ceremony. Commander Young was having an equally successful time with the terrorists. The group that had attacked Nexus Station thought they were safe in their hidden base on the dark side of an uninhabited moon. They had spent months planning their next attacks, confident that the weak galactic security forces could never find them. Young found them in 6 hours. She did not bother with raids or arrests or trials. She simply used kinetic bombardment to turn their base into a crater. Then she followed their supply networks, their communication channels, their recruitment paths, every safe house, every training camp, every sympathizer. Within 2 weeks, the terrorist organization that had killed 43 innocent beings on Nexus Station no longer existed. Not captured, not scattered, extinct. The reports that reached alien governments were unlike anything they had ever seen. Humans were not just winning battles, they were ending problems. Forever. Dr. Yoon coordinated the campaign from Luna Command, watching displays that showed human forces moving across the galaxy like a cleansing fire. Each red dot on her screen represented a threat that had existed for months or years. One by one, the red dots turned green, then disappeared entirely. "Doctor," her assistant Day said quietly, "we are receiving communications from several alien governments. They are concerned about our methods." "Concerned?" Dr. Yoon looked up from her displays. "What kind of concerns?" "They say our response is disproportionate, that we are using excessive force. Some are calling it war crimes." Dr. Yoon laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "War crimes? Day, show me the footage from the hive attacks. On civilian colonies, show me the children who were converted into mindless drones. Show me the entire planets that were consumed. Then tell me about war crimes." She stood and walked to the window that looked out over the peaceful Earth landscape. "For 30 years, we fought by their rules. We used minimum necessary force. We tried to capture instead of kill. We gave warnings, we offered negotiations. And what was the result? The moment we left, the galaxy descended into chaos." Day nodded slowly. "But some of the alien leaders are saying that we have gone too far, that we are becoming the very thing we were meant to protect against." "Are we?" Dr. Yoon turned back to him. "The hive consumed 47 worlds and killed 2 billion beings. We have destroyed the hive completely. Who were the monsters in that equation?" Reports continued to come in. The hive was gone, every trace of their presence scrubbed from the galaxy. The major pirate organizations had been eliminated. Terrorist networks that had operated for decades had been uprooted and destroyed. But the humans were not finished. Major Jin received new orders while his forces were still mopping up the last hive remnants. His target was a species called the Devourers, a nomadic race that had been contained by diplomatic agreements for 20 years. The agreements had prevented them from attacking major colonies, but they had continued to raid smaller settlements, taking slaves and resources while the galaxy looked the other way. The diplomatic agreements no longer applied. Jin's assault force hit the Devourer fleet in open space, far from any inhabited worlds. The battle was swift and one-sided. The Devourers, who had terrorized the Outer Rim for generations, discovered what happened when they faced opponents who had evolved to be apex predators. When the battle was over, the Devourer species was extinct. Not relocated, not reformed, gone. On Earth, the leaders of humanity gathered to watch the final phase of the campaign. On the main display, a map of the galaxy showed green lights where human forces had established control. Red lights marked remaining threats. There were not many red lights left. "Status report," Dr. Yoon requested. Admiral Chen, the overall military commander, stepped forward. "The hive has been completely eliminated. All major pirate organizations have been destroyed. Terrorist networks in 17 sectors have been neutralized. The Devourer fleet has been wiped out. Casualties? Human casualties. 47 dead, 112 wounded. Enemy casualties." He paused. "Complete." Dr. Yoon nodded. "And the response from our allies?" "Mixed," Admiral Chen replied. "Some are grateful. Others are terrified. Many are requesting clarification about our future intentions." "Through the Communication system came a familiar voice. It was Ambassador Kix calling from what remained of the Galactic Council. Dr. Yun, the Veltharian's voice was shaky. We need to talk, immediately. The conversation that followed was brief and one-sided. Doctor, your forces have exceeded all expectations, Kix said carefully. The threats to galactic security have been addressed. Perhaps it is time to return to more conventional peacekeeping. Methods? Conventional methods? Dr. Yun's voice was dangerously quiet. Ambassador, conventional methods are what led to this situation in the first place. Conventional methods allowed the Hive to consume 47 worlds before anyone took action. But surely now that the immediate threats have been eliminated... The immediate threats will never be eliminated, Dr. Yun interrupted. There will always be another Hive, another pirate fleet, another terrorist organization. The only question is whether we will wait for them to become problems or whether we will deal with them before they can hurt innocent people. The silence that followed stretched for long seconds. What are you saying, Doctor? I am saying that humanity is no longer interested in reactive peacekeeping. From now on, we will take proactive measures to ensure galactic security. We will identify threats before they mature. We will end problems before they begin. That sounds like... Like what, Ambassador? Like effective security? Like actual protection instead of political theater? Dr. Yun looked out at the stars where human ships now patrolled with new orders and new authority. For 30 years we played by your rules, she said. We were gentle, we were restrained, we were civilized, and the moment we left, billions died. Never again. The new order that emerged was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human forces did not just respond to threats, they prevented them. Pirates were hunted down before they could attack their first ship. Terrorist organizations were eliminated while they were still in the planning stages. Aggressive species found, themselves facing human diplomats who made offers that could not be refused, and everywhere in the galaxy, on worlds that had never known true safety, children went to sleep.